They introduced the design awards, what they are and stuff like that. And we have a special section this year, which is for student winners. Here's the first one. And then suddenly my picture was up there.
No way. Welcome to the next episode of the Going Indie podcast. The podcast that dives deep into the world of independent creators and developers. In this episode, I'm joined by Klemens Strasser, an indie developer with an inspiring journey. From winning an Apple Design Award as a student to balancing multiple apps and going fully indie. Klemens shares how he took the leap, prioritized his accessibility, and how he went indie while his apps didn't earn enough to pay the bills yet. Packed with insights and advice, this episode is one you won't want to miss. Welcome, Klemens.
Hi.
You're the first official guest of the podcast.
Yeah, I'm very honored to be.
I think it's funny to explain to the listeners as well. Like the first two episodes were actually guest lectures of my course, and I then realized, well, this might actually be something interesting to turn into a podcast. But this is in Amsterdam, and I wanted to keep the quality high, and I want indie developers that are all over the globe. So the challenge there is, get people in that are from anywhere to Amsterdam. So it happens that you are here in Amsterdam. Why are you here in Amsterdam?
I'm here because my girlfriend was running the marathon and we just wanted to spend a few days here in this beautiful city.
And I kidnapped you from the girlfriend.
Yeah.
That's a great start. But what I also didn't do is explain what this podcast is about. So just a brief introduction is that, we will inspire potential future indie developers, but maybe also those that are already indie, and share them learnings that you gained, or maybe learnings from challenges that you had. With this podcast, I really hope to, help people that want to go indie to eventually go indie. Let's just get the ball rolling. Who are you, Klemens? Can you explain?
Yeah, I'm from Austria. I do indie apps or iOS development since now close to 10 years or 10 years. That's about it. I started more with game development. But I always used native frameworks for multiple reasons. We can get into that a bit later. But I always wanted to become an iOS developer, but use games as a medium to learn things about iOS development. And released my first app on 1st December in 2014. Mm-hmm. And since then, released a few of those and worked at 2 companies on iOS stuff. And now went indie a week ago. So
a week ago?
Yes.
Isn't that a great timing for this podcast?
Yeah, it's a perfect timing, yeah.
And you're in Amsterdam, meant to be almost, isn't it?
Yeah.
And interesting, you worked for a company. It's quite a known app that you worked on, isn't it?
Yes. I worked on Fantastical, so I worked for Flexibits on Fantastical for a couple of years, and then also Cartop, but most focus was on Fantastical. And that was a very interesting thing because before I even started developing apps at all, I didn't know how to do apps in any means. I had my iPod Touch and I downloaded a bunch of games back then and also apps that just were featured on, I don't know, Cult of Mac or 9 to 5 Mac. And one of those was Fantastical. And I was in school. I didn't need a calendar app back then because my schedule was pretty fixed from school. So I just downloaded this and other apps to get a feeling about apps and to learn about them. And I was very inspired by the things that Fantastical did back then, but I would have never imagined that I actually gonna work for that app. So that was like kind of interesting thing for me, being a boy in school who loves playing around with some random apps and then actually getting to work on one of those. So
that's pretty fascinating, isn't it? It's in a way, this is for those that are maybe looking for a job. You thought you weren't able to get that job and you still got it. Was it like, didn't you believe in your potential, or because you still made a leap to apply and go for it?
Yeah, the thing is, I think back then, especially in Austria, there was not a lot of things going on in iOS development. So we had a few companies that are still going strong today, but I just didn't know them. And I was in school, and the focus in programming in school wasn't on mobile development at all. So I just thought doing apps is something so far out of reach that I will just never gonna do that.
Yeah.
And but I was interested in it, and I started to learn Objective-C and tried to just get into that field. And yeah, by happy accidents, I really got to work for one of those companies. So.
Which is amazing, right? Like the learnings you get from such company, especially with Fantastical, which gained quite some presence, also in the App Store. I think many of the listeners will probably know it. You can all bring that back to your
definitely
own apps.
Yeah. I think the things that especially Kent, the co-founder of Fantastical, and who are Flexibits, and like the big technical brain behind Fantastical, the things that he learned me over the years are still things that I apply today, and that I just couldn't have learned anywhere else, I think.
Yeah. And this is actually an interesting topic that I always like to explore, right? Like, did you, because you also have a few personal side projects that we will get back to in a bit, but did you purposely reached out to like the marketing department or the designers in the company to kind of like gain learnings that you could almost like, reuse for your own projects?
Not purposefully, but I mean, Flexibits is still a small company, but back then it was an even smaller company. I can't say for certain how many people we were, but I think it was below 10.
Right.
And so, especially when we launched Fantastical 3, we switched to a subscription model back then, and we got a lot of and completely redesigned the app and did a lot of things a bit differently, and got a lot of support emails over the first couple of days. And I wasn't never hired to be a support person, but because of the volume of support emails that we got, everybody had to jump in and help with doing support for that period of time. So getting a feeling for that was really helpful. I never intentionally wanted to do that, but I had to do it, and it really helped me to learn a few things. And also by happy accident, also the designer of Fantastical lives in the exact same city that I'm from, which is not a very big city. So it's the second biggest city in Austria. It's Graz, but it's nobody knows Graz internationally. Huh?
Storm Graz.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we recently got better in playing soccer, so that's why people start to know the city. But usually Graz is not a big player internationally. And when I started to work for Flexibits and for Fantastical, I didn't even know that he was living in the same city, and I think I only met him once there. But I met him more often on retreats that we had as a full company than in the actual city of Graz. But because we were in the same time zone, we collaborated lots of times, and also that collaboration helped me a lot to just learn how designer thinks about things and how to interact with a designer and stuff like that. So
just because of these things, I would almost say like never go indie without that experience, right? And I know plenty examples where it went well, but it's just so valuable to have knowledgeable people around you where you can work with, and that's what you can do when you go indie as well, right? Like match up with those designers that might also go indie, definitely. And see if you can work together with them, maybe help them build an app, or gaining that experience from somebody that's really experienced in that field is so powerful, isn't it?
And it also gives you a bit of a sense of that. Just because you're the programmer, that's not only a big chunk of the app. It gives you a better feeling of how much different things it takes to really make a great app and to learn the different disciplines and the things that are involved in making an app.
Yeah. I'm sure we'll get back to this later as well.
Yeah.
I want to go back. I think it's 2015, isn't it, when you did the scholarship? And
Yes.
when I looked up your profile, and I mean, it's already special if you can mention an Apple Design Award once. And I think I saw it multiple times. Same with scholarship.
Yeah.
And you mentioned 10 years that you're in this field.
Yeah.
It's quite a list already.
Yeah.
That's quite impressive.
Thank you.
Can you take us back to the moment where you first got in touch with Apple and the ball started to roll?
Yeah, I mean the very first app that I released was in December of 2014, which was Elementary Minute, which was a very simple quiz app, and I first wanted to build, like, I had the initial idea for that quiz app for the Apple Watch, because it's just a simple thing where you get a statement and it's either right or wrong, and you click either a checkmark button or an X button if it's depending on if you think it's right or wrong, and you have a couple of those questions and have to answer as many as possible within a minute. And I thought such a simple, small game would be fun on an Apple Watch, which wasn't announced back then when I started developing for this app, but there were rumors and everybody knew that this thing is coming. Similar with Apple Vision Pro, everybody knew that sometime Apple Vision Pro will come up. And around that time, everybody knew Apple Watch is going to be a thing, but we didn't know the specifics. And I thought, I want to build that now. I'm just going to build it for the iPhone to be ready to have a core when the Apple Watch is coming out. And then I released it in December. I think the Apple Watch was either officially announced in February in 2015, and then came out in April, something around those lines. And I was one of the first apps on the Apple Watch. I think there were 3 games or something like that, because nobody's playing a game actually on the Apple Watch. I also learned that after releasing it, because it's just, even holding your hand like this for a minute is like tiring. But it was still a fun thing to be on the Apple Watch very early on. And I think doing that got the attention from Apple to myself. So first, I only had a few downloads, like very, very little ones, but I was still so excited that, I mean, people from all over the world, not even from France. If somebody from Austria downloaded the app, I probably knew that that's a friend who's just supporting me. But if you then see somebody from China, from the US, or some other places download your app, and you don't know any people from those places, then you just know somebody else is trying out your app. And that's such an amazing feeling and such a amazing thing, especially me being back then at university and having not a lot of experience in total. So the app had very little traction at first, and then the Apple Watch came out, and I got some press also in Austria, and got a few more downloads. And then there was a featuring with 20 people under 20 that Apple did, and that was my first featuring, where I didn't even know that I'm going to be in this list. And then one day I just opened up the App Store, and then my app was listed in there some other amazing apps, and that was like a super nice feeling. So that was the very first thing where I got in touch with Apple. And then I thought I'd just give it a shot, and I tried to apply for a scholarship.
Yeah.
So I just read about that on some website, and I applied for it. And then I actually got that scholarship, which was super amazing, which got me the possibility to fly to the US. Back then, WWDC was still in San Francisco.
Good times.
Yeah, good times. And I got to experience WWDC for the first time. I got to fly alone for the first time. I got to fly the first time internationally, so it was a very exciting thing. Yeah, and like a week before WWDC, some person reached out to me, and I got that email, and I first thought it was a spam email because it was written very weirdly.
Okay.
But it's so it was, "Hi, do you have a minute? We need to talk. Here's my number. Get back to me." And I just thought, very weird, but it said Apple there, and then I looked up his name on LinkedIn, and I knew, that's a proper.
Should I even call?
Yeah, should I even call was the first reaction to that. But then I called him, and we talked a bit, and he said, "Yeah, we saw your app, and we loved Elementary Minute, and we want to do special featuring for you. And if I can send them some marketing material and the script of how to showcase the main features of the app very quickly." And I had to do all, and also make a few photographs of my working space. And my working space was a table under my bed.
And they called it special featuring.
Yeah, and they called it a special featuring that is going to happen in the future somewhere.
They didn't say anything about.
No.
Did you know Apple Design Awards or anything like that existed?
I knew that they existed, but I just didn't think that.
You didn't dare to.
No, I didn't dare to dream that this is going to be for that thing. It never came to my mind for 1 second, because it was just so out there.
Yeah, you just flown to San Francisco for the first time.
Yeah. So I did do all those things and send it to them, and then a week later arrived at San Francisco, arrived at WWDC.
This was a week before WWDC?
Yeah, a week before WWDC, he reached out to me and asking me about all those things, or tops 10 days, but it's about a week. So very, very close. And then the person that reached out to me said that he wants to meet up, and if we can meet up right after the main conference or the main keynote, and then like 5 minutes before we should have met, he said, "No, something did happen. He can't make it, but I should go to the State of the Union." Then I went to the State of the Union, and he said, "We're gonna meet right after that," and then he canceled that one again.
Okay.
So it was, we're gonna meet after the keynote, and then no, can't make it. We're gonna meet after the State of the Union. No, can't make it, but sit at the Design Awards. We will meet right after, we will. How did he say it? He said, I'm definitely gonna see you around, something like that.
Okay.
So I sat down at the Design Awards, and I didn't know anybody. I was just sitting in that room.
You had no clue at that point.
I had no clue at that point. And the Design Awards started, and then they introduced the Design Awards, what they are and stuff like that. And then, and we have a special section this year, which is for student winners. And here's the first one. And then suddenly my picture was up there.
No way.
So, and people started clapping, and I was sitting next to a guy that I didn't know, and I asked him, "So, should I now go on stage?
Yeah.
Or what the heck should I do?" And he said, "I have no idea, but congratulations." And then if you watch that video from 2015, you can see that it really takes a minute until I get on stage, because I wasn't certain, should I go there? Should I stay
You were
here?
meant to go on stage.
I was meant to go on
this
stage.
is so not Apple-like, right?
Yeah,
like they want to prepare everything in detail, and this is just like...
Yeah, that was a very weird experience. But I eventually got on stage and went there, and I got my cube, which is not the glowing aluminum one, but it's a special for students, which is a white one. And
why didn't you bring it?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's quite heavy, and I didn't want to got stuck in customs again. So.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And you will cycle to Den Haag today.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all a bit troubling, but it's I got that cube and I was standing on stage and then went down from stage. And then the guy from Apple who was writing me all the time was just standing there and said, yeah, I told you we're going to see each other later. So, yeah. But he always tried to just bring me to the design awards without mentioning that I have to be at the design awards. So that was his kind of tactic of trying to meet up without then actually meeting up, just to get me into that room.
It's so weird. I know things change now, right? Like there isn't even a dedicated session anymore. It's not in the in the same keynote area or anything like that. But I do believe people will know now beforehand, and they have to sign in.
They do.
You probably know that.
I know that.
I didn't now realize. Because this is not the only time, isn't it?
Yeah, it wasn't the only. It was the only time I won, but it wasn't the only time I got nominated.
Yeah. So the second time you were an expert already.
Yeah. No, but the second time I was still surprised to learn how things are different. This time around, but back then, like I would have never dared to dream to win one of those things. And I also going to the design awards, I just was interested in who's going to win the design awards. And I would have sat into that crowd anyway, but it was like a very weird thing to experience then, being the first one called out and then seeing my face up there with my app that I made on my little table under my bed a couple of months ago, which is,
This you need to write a book about this, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a interesting story.
Yeah. But it's also, like for those that are listening and dreaming of, like, in a way, yes, you were super lucky, obviously, but you also did a great job with the app, and you already prepared in advance for the launch of Apple Watch, right? And even though the game might not have worked out eventually as you hoped, because in 1 minute, it still brought you a lot. And I think bringing it back to today, the iOS 18 release or Apple Vision Pro, like you can see those things coming up, and if you prepare yourself for that, it could be a great way to line yourself up in front of the line with Apple, because they want to promote the apps that support the new features, right?
Yes.
They want to promote the apps that do all the great things with a potential new device. So I think that is one great learning. I mean, we can't teach anyone to win a design award, because then the whole system will break and everybody wins a design award. But I think it's super fascinating how that went. But you were nominated, I think, twice even after that, right?
Yes.
Is there anything you think? Is there a secret?
No, I don't think there's a secret sauce or anything like that, especially not for winning, because then I hope that I would have turned a nomination into a win. So I didn't win after that, but I'm still like super humbled and super impressed that I got nominated 2 more times for that. I mean, one thing that definitely helped is like you said, supporting new technologies and doing interesting stuff with new stuff that Apple is doing. But also I have a huge focus on accessibility. And I got nominated those 2 times in the inclusivity category. Yeah. Which wasn't the thing back in 2015, but now they have separate categories. And because of my big focus on accessibility, I think that always brings me in front of certain people from Apple and increased my chances of getting nominated.
They highly value that. I think even for the other design awards, if your app looks amazing, but it doesn't support accessibility, I don't think you will ever get there. That's kind of like a foundation that needs to be in there. But for those 2 nominations, like, maybe to really bring it back to the basics, do you regularly update Apple on the new features? Because supporting new features is one thing, but Apple doesn't know about all apps unless you tell them, right? Like, is there like a regular cadence where you tell them about, hey, in 6 weeks or something, I'll release this new app update? Or
if I feel strongly about a new app update where I do some interesting things, I always reach out to Apple through that promote sheet that they have on their website, and to then tell them what is really the interesting stuff they're most of the time also make a little demo or attach some slides or something like that they can look through. And yeah, that worked out several times pretty well.
Yeah. Oh, this is Klemens.
That guy again.
Yeah, no, but I think that this is really great in general. And it, by the way, changed this year. You can now do it via App Store Connect.
Yeah, I think it will change. It hasn't changed yet.
It's already live.
Oh, is it since when?
I think since actually last June, they did a release on App Store Connect, and there's now like a promotion page where you can now fill in all those details that you had to do before.
I thought it's still not online, but I'm not sure about that one. We need.
Maybe I'm a beta tester.
Maybe
I don't know.
Interesting.
But that's great stuff. And then a week ago, you finally made a leap, and that also means that this whole period was, when you had side projects, that makes it even more amazing. And what I also find interesting is that you focused a lot on accessibility. Like side projects, time is already limited, and the side projects that I've seen being developed often say no to writing tests or doing accessibility, right? Like they really focus on, adding more features and maybe, spend time on App Store optimization or marketing for growth, anything like that. But it feels like accessibility is always a second citizen in a way. What is your opinion about that, and why did you think it was important to do accessibility?
I think the first time I got in touch with accessibility at all was in 2015 on that WWDC, because I was going to a lab and then showing my app to somebody there from the accessibility team, and then they told me that I went there to just ask them in general about large type and stuff like that. So not really voiceover. So that's also my main focus is voiceover accessibility and making my apps workable for people with low vision or vision impairments. And the person back then told me, so why did you not bring Elementary Minute or make it compatible with VoiceOver? Why didn't you do that? And I just thought, why didn't I? I just never thought of doing that. I was just lacking the awareness that this was even a possibility. So I then reached out to a blind iOS developer from Germany who helped me to get an understanding of VoiceOver and to really nail the basics and getting that one right. And ever since after doing that, I got lots of positive responses. So
they are much more vocal, right? Those users,
and
they really are grateful.
Yeah, they are really, really grateful. And I think that's one of the main reasons why I kept on doing it, because like the feedback and the gratefulness of that whole user base is just so amazing. It's just, I got so many emails that I want to print out and just hang somewhere because it just makes you feel so happy to get responses like that. And I think also it's often an interesting challenge to do accessibility right, because many like simpler apps can be made accessible very easy with some tweaks and things like that. Me coming from games, it's not always so super easy to make games very accessible. So you often have to think already in the concept phase of a game to how could this be playable for a person who can't see anything there. And that often gives an interesting design challenge. And I really enjoy that. And that's one of the main things why I kept on doing it.
Yeah. So and you won an Apple Viz. Is it Apple? I looked it up.
Apple Viz, I was nominated for 2 times for Apple Viz for the Golden Apple Award.
Yeah. I first thought, like, is this Apple Vision or something? I wasn't
but
fully familiar.
But Apple Viz, that one almost closed this year, which would have been a tragic if that whole thing would have gone away. But the guys behind Be My Eyes took that over and will keep on running that community, and this is one of the most valuable resources, I think. So if you're a developer and you want to get some feedback on accessibility, just writing a forum post there, posting a test flight link there, will give you a whole pool of testers who will test your apps in ways you probably would have not thought about it, and gives you so much valuable feedback that you wouldn't get anywhere else. So this is like every time I do a new app, I definitely post something on AppleWiz to just reach out to a few people and to get very good accessibility feedback there. So very good website, very great community there. I really, it would have been super sad if that would have gone south, but great that they keep on going.
Yeah, and like nowadays Swift UI makes accessibility so much easier. Like back in the days with Objective-C, it was much more challenging. You had to do a lot of manual work, but nowadays there's almost no excuse. There in general shouldn't be any excuse for this, but
but it's I think it's in general doing the basic voiceover accessibility is somewhat easy. As long as you stick to system components and stuff like that, if you don't implement a button class yourself or something like that, then it's fairly easy to make something accessible. But it's you just often need to try it out yourself. So there is the possibility to just enable voiceover and then to black out your screen that you can't see anything, and then navigate around on the screen without seeing anything. And if you do that, you will easily find some buttons that are not correctly labeled or something that is not easily reachable through that interface. And then after testing that out, fixing those things are often very easy, but you just have to be aware that those things are not done correctly.
Yeah, this is great. Less intimidating now, so everybody should do it. All right, enough accessibility for now. This episode is sponsored by Superwall, the leading platform for in-app paywalls. Superwall makes it easy to create, test, and optimize paywalls, all without app updates or writing a single line of code. With real-time insights, A/B testing, you can quickly discover what works best and boost your app's revenue. Superwall offers hundreds of paywall templates and supports Kotlin, Flutter, React Native, and Swift. Trusted by top apps, Superwall lets you focus on building features while they handle paywall optimization. Ready to unlock your app's potential? Get started today at superwall.com. It's super interesting. You went indie last week. For those that don't know, we have an indie house at WWDC.
Yes.
Right? It felt to me you were always an indie. I think I now realize that, and that's also a thing, right? Like going indie, it isn't only about really being independent, not having a full-time job anymore. It's about building apps on your own, making something successful on your own, on the side. And my course is also not just for going indie, it's also for helping those that work at a full-time job make more out of their side projects. And I think that are learnings that are super interesting. And you made a leap last week, but I bet you were dreaming of it much longer. You have quite some friends around you that already made the leap, which challenges you even more to think about it. How did you plan that moment of going in? I bet you did. Or was it just...
No, I did not plan that exact moment. So
you were not fired, right?
No, I was not fired. I was not fired, but there was an opportunity in the company that just gave me the right push to leave the company right now. And
a financial push or
a financial push.
Okay.
So they were downsizing and they offered everybody a pay to quit.
Right.
And I liked working at that company, but I probably wouldn't have taken the leap now because taking the leap was super hard for me because I love working with people, and my little iOS apps and wearables team was such an amazing team. Like I when announcing that I take on this offer, I started crying because it was so hard for me to leave the company. But the company giving me the opportunity to that they give me some money that I quit was just the perfect push and the perfect sign that I should take on the offer and to get some money for the next 2 months to just focus on my own stuff.
So you really have only money for 2 months?
No, I got money from the company for 2 months,
Right.
but I also did some side projects or some contract work over the last year. So I'm financially stable for at least a year, probably more than a year. I had that money on the side, and I was always thinking, what is the perfect timing to go indie, and was always fearful to do the step. But then having that opportunity from the company was like the final push that I should really try and do that now. So I have at least money for 1 year, and I think I will see how that works out.
And you're saying 1 year, right? Like I like to draw that picture a bit more in detail, but you have a few apps in the App Store.
Yes.
I know a few are paid upfront, others are with a subscription model. So you kind of like have a prediction of your recurring income every month. Is it like a year of income that you saved in case all those apps don't bring in any money?
Exactly.
So it's in theory even longer.
It's longer than
right,
a year.
but it's you basically create a more secure environment for feeling wise, where risks are almost, zero in a way, isn't it?
It's basically that, yeah.
Because where you don't have to put in numbers unless you want, but how much money do you get from the side projects, and how far does that cover your expenses?
Yeah, I think it's most of the time 600-700 euros per month. So it's a good amount of money, but it maybe covers rent, and a bit more than that, but not a lot more than that. So I think it's definitely also something that I can grow. So I was always hesitant to get that step because I was fearful that I can't really grow that. But having that financial security on now gives me the possibility to really take the time and to try to grow those.
Yeah.
And I think we're gonna talk about that a bit more later. But there are certain things that I always omit doing while working on a full-time job because it's much more fun to play around with new ideas or new APIs than actually focusing on marketing or focusing on ASO or stuff like that. But it's often the smarter thing to do, to focus on at least a bit of your time on those things.
Yeah.
And I feel like having now the financial security and my apps out there gives me the possibility to really now tweak them, to try to get more revenue from them. But also I have a few things lying around that I always wanted to put out there. So will be a mix of trying to increase my apps that I already have, but also trying out some new stuff.
That's it, right? Like with side projects, you might have like maybe 2 hours, 3 hours per week. Maybe if you're lucky and your girlfriend doesn't ask you to do something together, you have the Saturday.
Yeah.
But that's basically it. And you also want to have fun in your spare time. So you probably work indeed on those new APIs or on the new device that Apple released. And it's already great that you have this income. But think about it, if you can work full time on those projects, right? Like it's very likely, unless you do something very wrong, that it will grow or at least, make your financial situation even better. Having that 1 year of security, you probably won't even need it, right? If things go well.
Yeah.
That's what you hope for at least.
That's definitely the hope and the.
Yeah.
But I feel like I already, in the first week of being indie, like one of the first things that I did was looking at my apps, and one of those had horrible paywall. Like the paywall didn't even show the price that people are going to pay for it, and it's a very low
call
price.
It a paywall?
Yeah, and I call it a paywall, but this was probably because the paywall was kind of an afterthought. I released the app initially as a paid upfront one, but it didn't work out very well. So I switched to a model where people could play the first, I think, 30 levels for free, and then switch to the paid version. And back then, I just didn't have any great knowledge about paywalls and didn't really think of how can I probably, or I really can convert people to paying the full thing. And one of the first things I did was just looking through my apps, and I saw that paywall again. I haven't touched that for 4 years again. I think.
Which app is it?
Ladder Rooms
Mm-hmm.
is the game which won which was nominated for the Design Award in 2022.
Mm-hmm.
But this back then, I think if I would have done the paywall properly, I would have converted more people over the last 2 years. And so one of the first things I did now being indie is actually taking time to make a proper paywall and to make that look nicer. And I think it already paid off. So I think the at least the last week isn't the great indication of how well it will perform over the next couple of months, but it also already there are some signs that it was a smart choice to finally spend some time there.
Yeah. No, I mean that growth takes time, right? But the more you do today, the more it can resonate and grow over time, right? And those 1% changes that you do every day on those paywalls or can really pay off. And in retrospect, would you wish that you did have done that earlier?
Yeah, definitely. Yes.
So for those that might have side projects right now, right? Like you have limited time, and you have an app, you want to make it more richer with features and stuff. Like, if you look back, like how would you balance your time spent on paywall optimization and feature development?
I think I should have done far less of the feature development and also far less of putting out new apps and focusing on getting the basics right. But I feel like you're always smarter after the fact that you did those things. So I'm not even sure if I would have been in the situation of knowing how to make a very good paywall back then, like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But I learned how to do something better through other projects and through more experience. So, and also to do those things quicker. So
it's also, I feel like over the last months or maybe year, there's much more publicity about paywalls, right?
Yeah,
like you see much more tools that make it possible to do it remotely, to experiment with it. There's many results of experiments. There's even subscription reports every year that you can look up where you can see like, hey, the weekly subscription and the monthly subscription are most effective in your category, right? Like that's by the way, every type of app has a different audience and that likes to pay differently, right? And it's interesting as well, right? Because I was looking at your apps and a few of them are paid upfront still, and a few were like that. You also have a few that are outdated, which might be the reason that they are still paid upfront.
Yes.
But in general, if you had the idea of going indie already, and I'm not sure if that's the case, but that's also something you would have done differently, isn't it? Like paid upfront apps, especially with games, you have no idea whether you will like the game maybe, and what you now did is you allow to create a habit for the user. Yeah. They reach level 3, they are in, they are like, oh man, I want to reach level 4, and then paywall. You know? Like, do you still believe paid upfront is even?
I think it's like paid upfront is very, very hard. So I think that's especially in the whole games area, because I feel like it's even harder to compete with the bigger companies in games, because often even app or games that are released on console are just repurposed on the App Store and then sold cheaper on the App Store. So you have to then to compete with a AA or AAA game that is sold for $10 on the App Store, and want to compete with that with also a paid upfront app. That's very, very hard. So I think in games, paid upfront isn't such a great thing anymore. Maybe it definitely can work for some apps, but I personally wouldn't do it anymore. Yeah, also because like people have such much more possibility to try out different games, so they would rather just, if they see one paid app and free ones, they will probably first try the free ones and then maybe go to the game that is paid up front, but maybe they will also stick on the free ones and then just never look at your app. While on apps, if there is one very specific app that is the only app in that category, and it's paid up front, then they have kind of to go with that if there is no alternative. But in games, there are often alternatives.
Yeah, and you see the same in with other apps.
Yeah, it's
right?
also...
And the funny thing is that it's not that people don't want to pay. In fact, I think that changes much more, and people are much more used to paying for subscriptions nowadays even. But it's more about they want to know what they pay for, right? And if you can get them into your app, give them a real experience. Still, you know, the best way to convert is to show a paywall right up front, because people are in the app store. They look for something. They picked your app as being the destination, so they're much more likely to convert at first launch. But then still, if you need to give them the option to stay in the app if they don't want to pay yet because they're not ready for it, and make that a great experience, right? And give yourself the opportunity as well to upsell them later at a later stage. And if they happen to stay for free, that's fine too. Maybe you build a new feature in the future that does make it more interesting for them to convert, right? But you all throw that away with a paid upfront.
Yeah, definitely. And also there's I think I got so much valuable feedback from users that probably never converted, but they still tried out the app and told me certain things that were wrong in the app. And I would have never got that feedback if I had a paid upfront app. So.
Yeah, that's also in a way revenue.
Yeah, definitely.
Right? Like,
because you then make your app better for people who will potentially buy the app.
Yeah. And you also briefly mentioned that you have multiple apps and you wished you had less apps and focused more on the basics.
Yeah.
I think I recently had a discussion with somebody that, I want to go indie in a year and I'll do a new app every month, and it's not your idea, it was somebody else. And then I hope to go indie in a year. And I'm like the opposite, right? Like I really like to focus on one thing, and you told the same now, right? Like, why do you think it's much better to focus on maybe one or two, or maybe a few apps instead of?
I think there are just certain things that you learn about an app after it has been released and after it has been used a couple of months and years that you can't always learn with different apps. I think both approaches have their pros and cons. Like iterating over certain things and trying out stuff with new apps definitely is a pro, but I think then also having multiple apps there and wanting to have the quality high of those apps needs your time to maintaining them, and that's much harder if you have lots of apps than if you have only one or two. So I really wished sometimes that I would have focused on more of my time on getting the basics correct of my apps and to grow those apps than to play around with something else. But it's also a balancing act with friends of mine who especially in game development, that's often the case, who start developing a game and then always feel like it's not perfect enough. They can't release it and only release it after 5 years. That's also not the ideal thing. So I feel like getting something out there and getting something released and learning from the whole experience of releasing an app is very valuable. And then after that, thinking if that's really an app that I want to continue working on and to expand, it's often the smart choice to expand on that. But I can also then see if somebody else wants to go to a different project after that.
Yeah, and
But
it's often easy, right? Like I just started a new project, and
it's the easier choice often, and the more fun choice, to be honest.
Yeah, that as well. The thing that I always find interesting here, like you look back and you now wish you did that, but those extra apps that you've built might have also made you who you are today, right? Like you definitely learned from it in a way, and it's also that you shouldn't just keep pushing on an app that will never be successful.
Yeah.
So if you realize but like how would you? Well, maybe you can actually answer that, right? Because you have a few apps that are still paid up front, and I saw like maybe you did one update for the new iPhones, and before that it was 3 years ago that you did an update. Like, when did you decide? Okay, I will not focus on these apps anymore, and I will distribute my time on those few apps only. Like, how did you make that decision?
Yeah, most of the time in the past it was just another fun idea came about, and I threw my time on that. But nowadays I think it's more where I see the potential of the apps, like looking at the market where I think it can grow, and also things that I personally find interesting and fun to make, because it's still we spend so much time on building our apps, and it should always be fun and interesting for ourselves to build those. So I pick out those apps that are both, I think, where the market is there, but also that are just fun to build.
Which is super important, right? Like, especially if you're still working at a full-time job, and because now with AI, I see many developers jump on the AI boat, which is great, right? But eventually, if it's not truly your passion, it becomes challenging to work on those on the side, isn't it? But then you just went indie, and I read your announcement post, and you also mentioned there's a new ID coming up.
Yes.
I will not ask you to share what you will be building, but it's more like you're about to add another app to your portfolio. Now, you will also gain 5 extra days a week to work on stuff, so I guess it will work out. But it's contrary to what we just discussed.
Yeah, I know.
It? So how come you are still making that decision? Like,
yeah, because I mean this one new idea that I have is an app that is lying around for now 2.5 years. So it's or not an app, it's a game, and a game that I feel passionate about. I kind of know that I feel like it's probably not the smartest financially decision to bring it out, but it's always an app that has such a high level of being finished already. So there is only a small leap that I have to take to actually bring it out, but I never went those extra steps because I never had the time.
Oh, you already built it partly?
Yeah, I already built it partly. So I didn't even... it's not something that I want to start, but this one app, this is also already built in such a huge part that people often said, why didn't you release that already? But I have my reasons why I haven't released it. So I feel like it would be a shame to not put it out there and to try that one. And I mean, it's something different still for games and apps. So maintaining an app is I don't know. There are certain features every year that Apple adds that you can build into an app, and that helps you to expand the app. But for games, it's often not the case. So you probably won't add shortcut support to your app or to your game, or you won't add widget support because it doesn't make sense in the context of the game. So I think games often are much more closed thing, and also something where it's fine that you don't update them after a couple of years. Where apps, on the contrary, there's always something you can extend, integrate and evolve. Yeah.
Right. And aren't you now? I'm playing the devil, but like your friends that are just want to make it perfect until release.
Yeah, the thing on friends that I have there is that they never actually experienced of putting an app out, and they if you never actually released an app, you don't really get the feeling of what things it takes to put it out there, even if it's just making all the screenshots in different languages or translating release notes, creating a website of your privacy policy and stuff like that. There's so many little things involved where you also get faster every time you do it. But first time, if you never did that before, it's a skill that you just never experienced and you are lacking. So I more try to push friends who never actually took the step of releasing something, that they finally release an app or a game that is it just has a limited scope, but it doesn't have to be like perfect or full out there for your first project. Just get something out there to learn something and to really experience the whole release cycle.
Yeah, this is so in my course I have a whole mindset module, and this is one of the things, right? Like get something out, and once it's out, it's much easier to do an update. Like the first release feels like such a big leap. But then as well, if you want to get a job, for those that don't even have a job, like if you don't know what it takes to get an app, into the app store, even if it's like a super simple app that doesn't do much, learning from that experience from A to Z, know how App Store Connect works and what you just described is super important, and it makes your resume also a bit better. I think you need to have an app in the App Store, at least know how to do it.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's actually something that your employer can download and play around and then get a feeling.
Which can be risky.
Which can be risky. Still, but it's something very nice to show off, and also to the whole experience around it is something interesting to do.
Absolutely.
Also gives you much more appreciation of what it actually takes to release an app. But I can totally see that I'm both contrary in I sometimes myself hold ideas to myself for too long. So I probably should have released that game earlier, and I should push myself to release both things that are not perfect out there, just to get feedback and to learn from that, but also not releasing so many things.
Before we dive back into this episode, I want to quickly share something that could change your journey. If you're dreaming of turning your side project into full independence, my Going Indie course is designed to guide you every step of the way. Visit goingindie.com and let's make your indie dreams a reality. That's going-indie.com. Enjoy the rest of the episode. All right. I want to look a little bit forward, and I also want to cover some different grounds. You're now going to be full-time working on your projects, which congrats, by the way, amazing. How will you schedule your time? Because you just mentioned paywall optimization as well. There's also marketing. Like most of the developers know how to build apps. Mm-hmm. Some don't even know how to design things, and then marketing is a whole different level, right? Like, what is your plan on scheduling your time, and how do you manage those things like design and marketing? Like, how do you do that?
Before going now full-time indie, I always focused much more on the development side, and I definitely shouldn't have done that. And it's definitely a learning that I had over the years, and I now plan to make both monthly goals but also quarterly goals and stuff like that, both for development and marketing, and really force myself that I have specific days where I really try to focus on marketing and see where to really bring my apps to more people instead of building that next feature. And that stuff that often is the thing that made more fun to me on the side, but it's important to also take the time for marketing.
How will you do marketing?
Yeah, it's a good question. I have, for example, for Study Snacks, which is one of my apps or the thing that I focused my most time on the last 2 years now. I already have a trailer lying around that I want to put on social media, so do some social media marketing there. I have plans laid out for regular social media posts, so I have my channels set up for like Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, TikTok, and stuff like that, but they are empty, so I need to fill them with content. And I have plans of what content that I want to show there, but it needs to be like consistent. I think that's also one thing that you often mention on your course, that consistency is very important, but you often lack that time to be consistent, to put on something on social media every other day or every day. If you only have such limited time when you work on a job on the side. So one of my things that I really want to do is to create that content and to then force myself to really put it out and plan ahead for the next couple of weeks on what content will be shown on those channels.
And do you plan on using several tools for that? Because there's a lot of automation tools, or will you potentially even hire somebody?
Yeah, I work with, when doing graphics, I first always did marketing graphics, especially also for App Store features myself. And I'm definitely not the fastest and not the best in doing those things. But I found another person, Daria, who's also living in Austria, who's like this really, really, really amazing designer, where I can just give her a few pinpoints of what it should look like, and she comes up with a design that is perfect in like fewer hours than I would have done it. So I really want to delegate certain things that other people can do better, and to then use their stuff on for the marketing. So,
and this is sometimes difficult, right? Especially when you aren't yet indie.
Yeah.
But if you go indie, maybe even more, it's daunting. Like you in a way, you have a year of salary, right? Which is quite a long time in a way. And now you will consider hiring an expert, which will cost you money.
Yeah.
And I realized for myself, like, it feels like daunting to spend like €1,000 on a certain tool, and by the time that you realize that you did that with a tool and it paid out, you will suddenly pay €2,000. You know, that increases over time when you make more income. But in a way, it's a skill, isn't it, to dare to spend money on an expert and realize that it might or will pay off, right? Like your App Store screenshots or your app icon, you know, those can really make the difference in conversion rates, and that, you know, compounds over time. And is that something you will change when you go indie? How does it work for you? Like,
yeah, I think I already changed that approach over the last over the last year. First, things like the app icon are also things that I designed myself for the first apps. But then for Study Snacks, I reached out to a designer who made the app icon for that one, and it really made a difference. Both for myself, because I feel much prouder about the app because it looks so nice. I'm very happy about that icon. But also I see that much more people are more likely to click on the app because the app icon looks so nice, and and gave me compliments that it really is a nice thing. So I think I learned that it makes sense to delegate those things and to dare to spend money on those things, but it's only something that you realize with experience.
But will this change now? Because before you had your full-time income, you didn't really rely on your side project. So it potentially is easier to use that income that you get from a side project, which I, by the way, recommend for those that are still, I mean, you don't need that money yet, right? So if you can invest that in growth and make the leap moment eventually easier because you've built up more income and maybe then reduce the marketing, but probably by then you realize like it's worth the investment. But like now you're dependent on the income that you get, right? So if it's 700 euros and you decide to hire an app icon designer for 2,500, like that's feels more risky maybe.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. But I learned through my experience of working with that app icon designer and with the other designer that it really pays off. So I really dare to continue taking those steps.
Yeah.
So
cool.
I don't think it won't change for me. Yeah.
Interesting. All right. Cool. All right. So we're almost at the end. I want two more topics, and the first one is your work-life balance, and which in a way is more important when you still have a full-time job, because there's already limited time and you work on side projects. But when I went indie, things changed unexpectedly, because it suddenly is your main income, right? Like everything you do pays off for yourself, but you also really have to make sure you get yourself an income. And for you as well, that maybe you have a spot for in a year from now, because that's when your savings are done.
Yeah.
Which can be negatively impacting your time spent on your work, because you might go full time and even more hours spent on your projects, right? What is your tactic here? How do you make sure that you still have a good work-life balance?
Yeah, I really often force myself to take down to put down the computer and do other stuff. So for example, also working, I started to work every day pretty early to be at home at a certain time, to have my daily walks with my girlfriend. So we have like every day we leave at around 4 p.m. for a nice garden that we have close by, or nice park that we have close by, where we walk for an hour and to just get away from everything. And that's something that I want to keep. And I also love to travel, and I will also want to keep on doing that, to just get myself out there and to not think about my apps and my work all the time, because I also every single idea that I had for my apps and my games was happening during doing something completely else that was not connected with anything app related. So either it was watching a movie, it was taking a walk somewhere, it was for the first game just looking at my watch in an idle moment, or just reading a book somewhere close to the ocean. I always had those ideas in moments where I wasn't working. So I know that it's important to take the time off and to bring yourself into other environment and do something completely else, to stay creative and to really keep on doing that. Because I think if you really just spend full time on your stuff and go over that all the time, then you burn out. You won't ever feel as fun as it can really do, and you probably won't be as creative as you could be if you really take the time off.
And now it's Thursday. It's 4 p.m. You're in the middle of that new feature that you're building. You're almost there. You feel like it, but you thought that 2 hours ago as well. But your girlfriend is there waiting for you. Like, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, then I really sometimes I say just 10 more minutes. But if I feel like I told her this already, then I know that it's not going to be 10 more minutes, and that is something that comes with experience also. But then I really put down the laptop and just leave it on the side. And most of the times it's really, if you then come back after not thinking about that, it's like this, and the solution to your problem.
But you don't stop thinking about it, isn't it?
Like, but if it depends. If you really bring yourself into a certain environment where you talk about, like, if I meet a friend for coffee and we talk about stuff that is not work related, then I have to stop thinking about the problem, because I'm in another environment, in another situation where I can't constantly think about the problem. So I try to just create such environments that get me away from everything to then start fresh into the problem again.
Yeah. It's fascinating. I did a talk about going indie at Swift Leads, and one of the sections I had is that there's something like sleep learning, and I made that up myself. I thought that's a thing. And then afterwards, somebody approached me, and just for the sake of telling me, like, hey, that's actually a thing. So if you work on something and you're stuck, you will bring it back into your night, and you will continue processing it, which can also be the reason that you suddenly see the solution the next day when you start. So I think in general, like, find a way to quit quickly and spend time with your friends and family and write down where you were, right? Like that. But yeah, it's super important to have that balance, and maybe it helps you that your girlfriend is waiting there. You want to keep
definitely.
her happy. But also if you don't have a girlfriend, right? Like, super important. Cool. I want to do some closing thoughts, and I would love to see if we can give some advice to those that are thinking about going indie. Like, what advice would you give them based on your experience?
Yeah, I think one thing that I said before is just putting something out there is definitely one of the most important things that people should just do. I think it's hard because you always feel vulnerable. If you put something out there, people will come and criticize it and give you feedback, but most of the time it will be constructive feedback, and it's something that you can learn from. So both for the sake of the feedback and through like really experiencing what it takes to put an app out there, for those learnings, it's super valuable. And then also, it's not only feedback that criticizes your work, it's also, for example, like with my all the accessibility feedback that I got, it's such delightful feedback and things that will make you happy and just pushes you forward into the right direction, that really helps you to either then enhance the app or to do another project if that's your thing. We discussed both possibilities, but I feel like getting the first step, pushing something out there, having something out there is like the most important thing.
Learn by shipping, embrace failure.
Yeah,
super important.
Definitely.
Amazing. If people want to follow you, where can they find you?
Basically on all the socials. So Twitter, it's at Klemens Strasser. It's the same thing on Mastodon, on Blue Sky, Instagram, whatever. Those things that just fly around. Yeah,
I'll make it easy. I'll put that all in the episode notes.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot for being here. Super special to have you here while you are on a holiday, I guess.
But thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, it was super interesting, and I hope that we inspired many future indies, and we'll see you in the indie house.
Yeah, definitely.
All right.
Yes.
Well, thanks, and see you later.
Yeah, thank you.
That's it for this episode. Every indie journey is unique, and you might find inspiration in other episodes as well. If you enjoyed the show, please like, subscribe, or leave a rating on your favorite podcast platform. It helps me reach more creators who dream of going indie. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.